Cool. Hello. Hi, everyone. Good evening. A warm welcome to all the participants here for the session today. Um, I'm Sonal. I'm part of team admissions here at Azim Premji University. Uh, Last week we had a session for the undergraduate program admissions process, and we also discussed about the programs that we offer. So today we have our faculty for the BA program who will tell you about the more in details about the program as we discussed earlier. So I'll quickly tell how the webinar session looks like today. We'll start with BA Philosophy program, BA then English, BA English, History, and in the end we have BA Economics program. So will not waste much of time here today. I would like to invite Professor Abhishek Kashyap from BA Philosophy. Hi, Abhishek. Hi. Yes.
Hi, Sonal. Hi, everyone.
Hi. Yes. So Abhishek will talk more about the philosophy program here at Azim Premji University. Over to you, Abhishek.
Thank you. Could I have the slide deck on screen?
Sure.
Great. Hi, everyone. I can't really see you, but I hope you are all having a good time. Happy Holi, and thank you for taking your time out and being with us today. And hopefully I'll be able to tell you some important bits about the BA major in philosophy. And I hope all of you can hear me loudly and clearly.
Is the screen visible? Are you able to see the PPT, Abhishek?
Yep, I can.
Yeah.
I suppose the broadcast is. Hello. Could you go to the slide, the BA philosophy slide, Sonal? Good, thank you. Okay, so I'll be telling you a bit about the BA major in philosophy, and if you have any questions about it, you can ask it right away during the chat itself, or you can probably put it in the chat box, and then we'll take it up later. But before we start talking about the program itself, let's talk a bit on what philosophy is, because it seems that this is not a subject which is very commonly found in Indian schools. As a working definition, I'll tell you that philosophy is the study of some really significant question that almost everybody takes for granted. So for example, a scientist wants to check whether or not the theory that he's working on is true. How would he go about doing this? Probably he would design an experiment, conduct the experiment, and see whether or not evidence tallies with what the theory predicts. For a philosopher, however, the more important question is, what really is the relation between a theory and evidence? Is evidence only that bit of information that can be derived from a theory, or is it something else? Amongst the other things, one other thing that could be of interest to a philosopher would be this question: what really is science interested in? Is science interested in getting us to the truth of the world, or is it interested in getting us more robust predictions about the world? So that is what philosophers do. They take up questions which rely on, or they rather question the certain suppositions, certain assumptions, which a lot of people do not question. Now, as I was telling you, that philosophy is one subject which almost nobody does it in school. That really enables our classes to have sort of a uniform starting ground. We do not really have these differences in levels between the students. But then, if they have not done it in school, how would they do it in college? Some of you might wonder. What really is it to do philosophy? What are some of the methods? I'm sure you'll find a lot more information about this when you go to college. But just to give an introduction, in philosophy, some of the methods that we rely on are questioning the assumptions, or rather making explicit the assumptions in our claims, constructing and evaluating arguments, and really engaging and working with others. But what does it really mean to, again, get to the assumptions, certain assumptions that we have? This, again, can be understood with an example. So, for example, consider this claim that statements are either true or false. So if you have a statement which is not true, it is going to be false. But is that really the case all the time? So, for example, take this statement, which says, this statement is true, this statement is false. How do we go about assessing the truth or falsity of this statement? I mean, if the statement is true, then what it says is true, but what the statement says is that it is false. So really, if the statement is true, then it becomes false. But if the statement is false, then it becomes true. So this sort of these types of statements, which is called a liar statement or a liar paradox, is something that really makes us think carefully and closely about what it means for a statement to be true, or how do we go about assigning this predicate called true to different statements. Some solutions have been proposed which claim that the predicate true cannot be used in the same language as a sentence itself. So this is probably one example where you have philosophers taking something which is commonplace, like the truth of a statement, and trying to think whether this particular concept, that is truth, can be applied intelligibly across all situations. So, but that is how we do philosophy. In addition to the typical methods of doing philosophy, at Azim Premji University, we have a focus on public service. So the kind of examples that you see in our classrooms, they have something to do with the country. They have something to do with the real world problems that people face. It is also important to keep in mind that we do philosophy really by talking with each other, by discussing with each other, by making clear our arguments and inviting their evaluation from our peers. So really doing philosophy at Azim Premji University is about engaging with publicly questions which are relevant to the public, engaging with them in a clear and thoughtful manner, and working with our peers. Could we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So this is how the course structure at Azim Premji University, the BA major in philosophy, this is how it looks like. The boxes in light blue are the core courses in philosophy. I do not really have time to go through all of them, but just let me tell you about two of these courses. In philosophy of science, we really study about what it is for a theory to be validated by evidence. We study what is the relation between theory and evidence. Also, we look at how scientists arrive at a decision. How do they arrive at a decision whether or not this theory is better than some other theory? We look at certain rules of inference which are widely employed in science. But we do not do this merely in abstract. All of these claims, all of these interesting bits of science is done by studying it in conjunction with science itself. So in the philosophy of science course, we do some bit of quantum mechanics, we do some bit of RCTs, randomized controlled trials, in order to understand what is the underpinning of these different methods or the different theories. Similarly, in philosophy of measurement course, the idea is to take or to make clear certain normative suppositions that go into these measures like Qualis or Gini coefficient. Is there a question here? No. Okay, cool. In addition to these core courses, you'll also have to take courses from outside the discipline. The reason is that we believe philosophy is done best when it's done in conjunction with some other discipline. So you take the insights that you get from your philosophy courses and try to see how well it can be used in, say, for example, the study of economics or the study of history or mathematics. As of now, the three streams that have been proposed are, as you can see on your screen, economics, history, and mathematics. The capabilities that we develop in philosophy, it sits very closely with the capabilities that are needed in these disciplines. Moving on to the next slide. I want to speak very briefly on what can be done, because this must be really an important question for all of you, right? I mean, I'm going to study philosophy. It's a new subject for me, but what do I do after the degree? Well, this thing can be answered by two ways, or by looking at two different things. not really entirely different, but two interrelated different things. The first is to really look at the capabilities that you will have after completing the BA major in philosophy at Untitled University. The capabilities that we want to develop in our students, it includes the ability to reason rigorously, the capability to communicate clearly, to find creative solutions, to critically engage with texts, and most importantly, probably, to work with others, to build and sustain relationship. Now, it might now seem kind of clear to you that these capabilities are not limited to philosophy. In fact, if you talk to a prospective employer, they would say that these are exactly the kind of capabilities that people need or people seek from their employees. So really, after you do philosophy, you can actually go to a lot of, like if you want to go for a job, you can actually find job in a lot of industries, whether it is journalism, whether it is banking, whether it is let's say if you want to pursue higher education in law, you can do that. So that is about education. What about further studies? Now, we don't really have a lot of evidence from India, but the evidence from USA suggests that philosophers tend to perform better than almost every other discipline when it comes to, like say, GRE, GMAT, or LSAT. LSAT is the exam that you have to give if you want to do a master's in law. GMAT is, well, a general aptitude test for master's degree, and likewise for GRE. As you can see in your screen, that philosophy people who have taken philosophy at undergrad level, they tend to score more than every other discipline in GRE. When it comes to GMAT, they're almost better than, better than almost every other discipline apart from, say, maths, engineering, and physics. And as far as LSAT is concerned, which is the aptitude test for law, again, you see philosophers performing better than all the other disciplines. There could be a lot of reasons for this. The reasons that come to my head, top of the, at this moment, is that the capabilities, the skills that you develop if you do philosophy properly, is probably the skill that you need to excel in every other discipline. Okay, so really, if you do philosophy, the world's a stage for you. You can find a job in any kind of discipline, or you can pursue pursue higher education in some allied discipline. The next slide. Sorry. Okay, I also want to tell you a bit about the entrance examination. Keep in mind that the entrance examination consists of two separate papers. One is a common paper that is common to all the disciplines, and the other is a philosophy-specific paper. The common paper carries negative mark, and I cannot stress upon this enough. Please be careful when you are answering the common paper, because, if you attempt a question and it turns out to be wrong, you are going to be penalized for that. On the other hand, the discipline-specific paper, the philosophy paper, that does not have negative mark. It will have 3 questions, and the format of the question you can make out from the screen. The first question is basically you have a bunch of information. Using that, you have to find whether some given statements are true or false. The second question is really about validity. We explain what validity means in the question paper itself, but if you want, you can also probably look it up and be prepared for the exam in a sense. The third question is an essay type question, but it's not really asking you to write your views on a topic. We give you a prompt, an argument rather, and you have to argue against the thing. You have to show the problems that argument has. What is wrong? You have to come up with what is wrong with that argument. So that is about the question paper. Finally, if you could go to the next slide, just to tell you who we are in philosophy. I'm the person on the top left corner of the screen, and going clockwise, we have Aditi, Nishok, Kit, and Asim. This is the philosophy group at Untitled University right now. You can know more about it. You can follow our updates by following us on Twitter. The handle is @contributething. That's it from the philosophy group, but we'll be happy to take any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thanks, Abhishek. It was a brief insight about the philosophy program. I'm sure our philosophy aspirants would have good questions for you. So those who have students who have joined, applicants who have joined later, So we have already completed the session by Professor Abhishek, and at the end we can take the question and answer. We have a question and answer session for all the majors. So make sure you note down all the questions, whatever you have. Thanks, Abhishek. Right. So I would like to now invite Professor Neerja for the BA English program. Hi, Nirja.
Hi, Sonal.
Hello. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, we
Thanks so
can.
much, Sonal. Yeah, we can just begin with the slides, I think.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So, hi, everyone. And thank you, Sonal, and thank you, Abhishek, as well. I think following closely from following closely from what you just heard about philosophy, I'll take you through what you can expect when you join the BA program in English. In keeping with the theme that we've been discussing so far, I think I'll also try and begin with giving you a sense of thinking about English the way that you're likely to have thought about it so far, because English is something that typically you do encounter in school. And I thought I'd give you some way to think about how English is likely to be different for in terms of how you've done it so far and how you're likely to encounter it in an undergraduate program, and especially here at APU. um, Typically, when I start a session like this, I always ask students to tell me what they think about when I say English or when I say BA English. And I thought I'd share with you some of the responses that I end up getting. One response I've received is that it's a very difficult, people find it to be a very difficult language to study. So if you think about it as a language, it can seem like a difficult language to master. Another response I've got is that English is the one exam in school you don't study for. So it's basically like the holiday exam where you can use your time to basically study for other papers while you think of English as just very procedural and grammar and just writing. And another response that I've got is that, how is it going to be different, right? So is it that you're going to be doing very similar kind of work that you did in school, in college as well? So just to respond to some of these things, if you want a very quick shorthand for the BA English program at APU, you can think about it in terms of these 3 R's. So you have reading, and you have writing, and you have creating. This might become clearer as I take you through the content of the program. But essentially, these are 3 things that we've tried to keep in mind that students will be able to do at the end of the program. Okay. So Sonal, can we move to the next slide? Yeah. So here's what you can expect when you join our program. Interactive classrooms. Now, this is important because if you remember the second R, which is the R focused on writing, okay, as well as the one focused on reading, both of these capabilities are very focused on teachers giving you feedback. And this is true of APU in general, not just the English program. We have small classrooms and we have very interactive classrooms. And these are very effective ways of ensuring that you receive feedback on your writing and you receive a lot of support when you do your writing, which is a very big focus for us in the English program. English programs in general feature a significant amount of literature from literature in English and literature from England. One of the things we've tried to do here is to think about our curriculum in a little more diverse and inclusive way. So what you can definitely expect is to read a lot of literature and a lot of reading from cultures and from places not just limited to England. We have planned several elective pathways, and the primary themes of these pathways are creative writing, translation, and media production. These are 3 kinds of allied areas we think work very well with the kind of skills someone can learn in a BA English program. And so you will have many courses that will allow you to learn how to do creative writing, learn how to work with the tools of translation, and to create different kinds of media texts. If you will notice on this slide, there is a photograph of something called a humanities miscellany. If you go to the English page on the APU website, you will find a link to this very same humanities miscellany. This is nothing but a student magazine that is run by our current students. It's very much of what we think are important capabilities in the BA English program. Students themselves are responsible for producing, editing, writing, and contributing the pieces that go into this magazine. So please have a look at this magazine to get a sense of what is involved in an extracurricular activity like this, which directly feeds into some of the things we're doing in the curriculum. Sonal, could you go to the next slide, please? So at this point, I'm going to take you through the actual components in our BA English curriculum. And the curriculum, for convenience, you can think about as being divided into core papers and those that are more specialized parts within BA English. Can we go forward right? So you will notice here in this list that there are some introductory courses to literature, which means that if you're worried that you're not really a BA student, if you're worried that you're coming in from a science stream, we do start our course with introductory courses that take you through a set of skills and capabilities necessary to learn how to do studies in English. So we start with an introductory course, and then we move into the three capabilities that I listed at the beginning. So we have courses that focus on reading and on writing as well as creating. So as you can see, we have courses on creative writing. We have courses on contexts, which is one of the aspects of studying literature, which is to understand how literature is contextualized in a particular time. If someone is writing in a particular period of time, if somebody is writing from, say, a certain professional stance, can there be contexts in which literature emerges, which changes the way that we look at this particular kind of literature produced by fans, for example, right? So we have contexts that determine writing in terms of different forms of writing, people who write, regions in which they're written. And we also have allied disciplines like cultural studies, which inform some of our courses. So if you notice perspectives 1 and 2, these are ways in which you can open up the study of literature towards other disciplines like cultural studies and media studies. So these are courses that come towards the end of the 3 years to allow students to specialize or think about disciplines outside of literature as well. Sonal, could you go to the next slide? Right. So these are some of the electives that we have. I'll just give you a moment to go through the names of the courses, and I'll just talk a little bit about what each of these electives can mean. So each of the electives that you saw in the previous slide are ways in which you can specialize within the core. So while all students take up the subjects in the core, the electives are meant for you to choose a certain path within BA English. And each of these electives lead to, we believe, certain specific kinds of futures. So if you're very interested in pursuing journalism and communication for your career, if you're very interested in pursuing a master's degree in literature, if you're interested in becoming a professional writer, several of these pathway courses allow you to do just that. Yeah, you can go to the next slide, Sonal. So here we have, the important section of how to think about what to do after you have done a BA in English. So if you will notice, there are the very obvious parts of taking a master's in English after you're done with your BA. But you also have, and these are options which several of our alumni have also pursued. But some of the paths that are open to you are journalism, working in editing and publishing, working in producing digital media texts, and in creative writing and storytelling, as well as teaching and working in the social and government sectors. These are all places where I think many of the capabilities that are instilled in our BA English program will serve you really well. So if there are any questions that you have about the BA English program, I'll be happy to answer them. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Nirja. Thanks for a wonderful presentation. Especially when you said that there are options also for creative writing and storytelling after doing BA program was very interesting. So I know there will be questions regard to this. Thanks. Thank you, Nirja. Yeah, I would like to invite Varuni, Professor Varuni Bhatia, for the BA history presentation. Over to you, Varuni.
Thank you, Sonal. Hello, everybody, and it's my great pleasure and delight to be here to introduce the BA History major to you at Azim Premji University. Happy Holi to all of you, and thank you for joining us on this evening. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Thanks. So the BA History program at Azim Premji University takes as its tagline, narrating stories, understanding societies. We have this tagline because as the image that is right next to it reflects, history is not just something that stays in the past, especially not in a country like India, especially not for us, where history is very much a part and parcel of our present. It produces not just individuals, but it produces communities, it produces societies, it produces regions, and we are constantly harking back to our past in different kinds of ways in order to differently understand our present, whether it is to improve it, or it is to critique it, or it is to find models from the past in order to make a better and more utopian kind of a present. And that is kind of the way in which we imagine the history program at our university. We very much imagine it to be something that is located from the context of the present, and we look back into the past in order to help us understand this present better. Next slide, please. So what do we do in the history program at Azim Premji University? And how are we different from other kinds of history programs? Once again, history is something that you can do in any college in India. Any college that has a Bachelor of Arts degree offers a history program. So why should you choose us over and above anybody else? And many of you may already have done history in your class 10th or even up to your class 12th. And you may feel, well, I know enough about history. I know when this battle or that event happened. I know what this king did. I know what that sage had said. So why should I even come and do any more history? Now, what we do in our university is that we build historical consciousness and sensibilities. We are interested in running a history program that inculcates in you a historical consciousness. This is not about knowing events and understanding or having your dates on the tip of your fingers, even though that is important. This is about engaging with the recorded past in an inclusive, comprehensive, and rigorous fashion, in a methodologically rigorous fashion. It is about relating the lessons of the past to the present contexts and situations. What we also do in our program is to communicate historical knowledge creatively and cogently in the most diverse of contexts. And by that, I mean many historians and many people who think history is just about reading historical narratives. And mostly that means reading, academic histories. What we teach our students to do in our program is that you can actually talk about the past in many different ways across many different kinds of platforms and many different kinds of genres. So you can think about history writing through fiction writing or through graphic novels or on digital platforms. You can even do good histories over Twitter, we believe. So we are very interested in allowing our students to explore these different kinds of ways of communicating historical knowledge. And this is something that's very much inbuilt in our program, what we teach in our classes and the kind of evaluations that we have in our courses. And finally, and what I think is actually quite the crux of our history program, is that we focus on practicing history, actually doing history. What I mean is that in every course that our students take at our university, they are involved in one way or the other in actually being historians, in practicing a certain kind of history. Now, that could mean that they could be involved in building some kind of an archive, or they might be involved in thinking about heritage or preservation, or they might be involved in conducting oral histories through interviews, family histories, for instance, a big favorite amongst our students. They might be involved in collecting folklore from the region that they come from. This is something that many of our instructors have tried in their classes with great degree of success. Or they may be involved in actually producing data, in doing data visualization. So if they are given a set of numbers or a certain information, they're able to then visualize it and map it onto places where data visualization is possible. So in this fashion, we actually have a history program that is quite remarkably different from what the kind of histories that are taught at school level, which largely are about memorizing. We are not about memorizing. We think it's important. It's not as if you don't have to do it, but that is not the end aim of the history program that we run over here. Really, what we wanted to do is to have you develop historical consciousness and sensibilities as we go through this program. Next slide, Sonal, please. So I'm hoping that this list of history courses will make it clear to you what it is that we want to achieve and how we go about achieving it. And at this point, the list of core courses, which is in front of you, number 1 to 8, you can take a good look at it. I won't talk about all of them because some of these courses do resemble what a standard history curriculum would look like, either at school level or at college level. But I do want to focus on a few courses over here that may look somewhat different. The first one, of course, is the very introductory course, which is called Doing History. And as you can see, we want to begin not with just giving you content, not with giving you domain knowledge about history, and not with certainly, this is when this thing happened or that is when what happened, but we want to begin our introductory course, our introduction to history, by telling you how is it that you do history? How do historians come to certain conclusions based upon the evidence that they find? And that evidence may be archaeological evidence, it may be literary evidence, it may be evidence based upon certain kind of statistics and statistical records that historians are able to locate. It could be a range of different kinds of sources. It could be coins, it could be carbon dating. How is it that historians know what they know about the past? And how is it that an average young student of history can then take that kind of a knowledge of doing history to be able to say, well, I see a piece of inscription over here, or I see a certain kind of description of an archaeological find. This is what is possible to say from it, and this is not possible to say from it. So we teach that in our courses. We teach our students to be able to make critical, analytically sound conclusions about the kind of historical sources that they're seeing in front of them. I also want to talk a little bit about the final course, the ultimate course that our students do, which is number 8, History of the Present. This is an unusual course. In most history programs, the history itself ends at 1947. We assume that once the nation state of India has been born, on 15th of August 1947, that is where we have come into our own as a nation, and we don't need to study any further. In our program, we take this further. we do talk about the next 50 years and indeed the next 70 years. So we bring history all the way up to the present to encourage our students to engage with what has happened in the more recent past in India, and how different kinds of ideas of the deeper past then impinge upon the way in which we understand the more recent past. The other course that I briefly want to mention is number 5, Indian Ocean Worlds. And the reason I want to mention this course is because we don't understand India in isolation in our program. We very much understand India as a part of a global network of transformations, changes, and connections. And we are interested in having our students explore these connections. So this particular course on Indian Ocean Worlds talks about trade networks around the Indian Ocean world, which has connected the subcontinent, India, with various parts of the globe, including Eastern Africa and the Southeast Asian part of the world. So in this way, our courses offer a unique opportunity to students to study history in a way that is both, inculcates a certain kind of historical sensibility, but also reminds them constantly that history is about layers and nuance and about understanding ourselves in larger global transformations. Next slide, Sona. Thank you. Following the core courses, we also have electives in history, and they are broken up into 4 themes. Students have the choice to take one course out of a couple of courses that will be offered in each theme. And these themes are economic, labor, and environmental histories, social and intellectual histories, public histories, comparative and connected histories. In many ways, these themes are organized in order to deepen students' domain knowledge in certain kinds of important themes that we have around which history has often been discussed. But at the same time, I do want to talk a little bit about theme 3, which is public histories. And here we are very interested in encouraging students to think broadly about history, not just as specialized knowledge that is produced, but as knowledge that can be widely disseminated on a broad platform in ways in which it can reach, historical knowledge can reach a very wide range of people who may be interested in the past for any reason, And so we do think in a great deal about how is it that we can do good public histories at our university. Next slide. Thank you. So the skills and capacities, broadly speaking, are reading, writing, critical thinking and analysis, which is something that philosophy and English and history share as common to our program. We all encourage our students and train our students in these practices. What we do on the history side of things, which is also very important and we take it very seriously, is ethical responsibility and action. And this is with regard to how we understand young people in India today and how we understand that young people in India today have to have a sense of ethical responsibility and an understanding of what kind of action ought to follow from ethical responsibility. Of course, we are concerned with history in this particular fashion. So we are concerned with producing actors, young actors in India today, young citizens in India today, who are able to see that history brings to them a certain kind of ethical responsibility about how they use the past, and to be able to take action in a way that is based upon a good use of the past in different ways. So we do inculcate amongst our students this kind of ethical responsibility vis-a-vis history in particular. And of course, practice of history is something that is very much a part of skills and capacities. Our courses, many of them, and some of you may have seen that I have a colleague, Uttara, who teaches Ancient India on the chat with you all. Her courses very commonly have field work, She takes students to archaeological sites and is able to, in fact, teach them about how to do histories as an archaeologist would do. The next slide, please. So finally, these are some of the career pathways that you can have after BA History at Azim Premji University. We imagine education both in its fundamental role as primary and secondary level, as well as higher education to be something that many of our students will go into. Some of you, and definitely not all, may decide to become professional historians in the long run. But we also think of a number of other different pathways that you can choose after a BA in history. And this includes going into the social sector, going into media and journalism. You could become people who are public policy makers. You can be a part of preservation and heritage of ancient monuments, ancient and medieval monuments and sites in India, which I think is something that is an extremely important aspect of practicing history that we can in fact give back to the society in a meaningful fashion. You can become authors and writers. You can be a part of archiving, become a part of the library sciences. So these are some of the career pathways that are available to you. If you want to know more about us as faculty, if you want to know more about individual courses, I would request you to go and see our website. It is not easy to locate, so I'm just going to read it out over here, and maybe Uttara can put it in the comment box for you to go and check it out. It's called sites.google.com/apu.edu.in/history major. So we hope to see many of you in our classrooms soon enough. Thank you.
Thanks, Varuni. Thanks for a brief presentation. I'm sure students will be having questions, and we are getting a lot of questions in the chat box. Many of our faculties are helping us to answering those questions, but we also will surely take questions in this platform. Yeah. I would now like to thanks, Varuni. I would now like to invite Professor Rahul Dey for the BA Economics major.
Hi, Sonal.
Hi Rahul. Let me just quickly share the presentation.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rahul. I'm a faculty in the economics group. So I'll just give you a little bit of detail about what's the economics program about, and then I'll talk more about the courses. Sonal, you can take it to the next slide, actually. So just to give you a bit of context, economics has been a fairly popular course in India for a while now. In fact, all the major universities provide economics, and because of its increasing applicability towards the job market, it's a fairly popular discipline. I was part of the group which made the economics program in APU, and so I thought maybe I'll tell you a little bit about how we thought about it and what kind of program we wanted to make. So there's some things very specifically we wanted in our economics program, and these are some things that I think makes it a little distinct from other economics programs in India. Most programs, if you look at economics, they focus on, and those of you who've done economics in college, school, or those of you who've done a bit of research will know, is a focus on microeconomics and macroeconomics. And then a lot of the courses are based on these two kinds of theories. In our program, a lot of focus is on immersing students towards different kinds of theories and economic concepts that are available or that you can read about. And when I come to the courses, I'll tell you about what the different ones are. But for us, being exposed to, you can go back to the last slide. Actually, I'll come back and talk more about this. So the course is focused on exposing you towards different kind of theories, and the idea behind it is that what makes a good economist is one who knows multiple ways of addressing a problem or looking at a question or researching on something, and that's why breadth is an important part of the program. Secondly, something we wanted to do was that anything we teach in our economics program is embedded or contextualized through things that are actually happening around the world. Because we believe that abstract theories or models do not make sense till you apply them to a real life situation, because invariably economic theories face a lot of challenges when you're looking at some day-to-day life. So I'll give you a quick example. Any of you have done economics in school would have learned something called competition, right? How different markets function and how companies or firms compete with each other. And you must have read of different kinds of competition, something called perfect competition, monopolistic competition, oligopoly. Now, when you actually look at look at the economy, you don't find these forms of competition. Most companies are these models do not define exactly how it works. So if you look at something like perfect competition, you don't find anything equitable or similar in the world. But in our program, we like our students to sort of try and do this themselves. So one of the earliest projects that you do in economics is you're taken to a real market of some kind, and you're made to, you have to analyze and talk to people and interview and figure out, what's the nature of competition. And one of the popular ideas is to take students to sabzi mandis or vegetable markets. Right? Vegetable markets are probably one of the closest kinds of examples of what could be perfect competition. And I think as students go around trying to figure out how price is made, what kind of strategies sellers use, to understand, how far does the model explain this, but also what else you need to know to figure it out. So focus on using case studies, real world examples in the teaching. The third is we felt very strongly that since it's an economics program in India, there should be a focus on Indian context, which means that for all the courses, a lot of the examples, case studies, data used is used from India. That doesn't mean that we only study India. There is also exposure to other economies, data from around the world. But a large part of the focus, especially for courses such as development economics or public finance, is to use Indian data as far as possible. And part of the thinking is that a good economics program in India should expose students to how the Indian economy works. Another sort of pedagogy which not only describes the economics program as the other faculty spoke, it's a strong part of the way teaching is done in APU, is to base the learning around questions or around getting students to pose questions and try and sort of explore answers together for them. Which is a different methodology from having, let's say, examination and focusing your studying towards that, or having a textbook and focusing on learning. So early on in courses, you sort of try and find questions that students are interested in, and then a lot of the learning of the course helps students reach those, or at least explore and understand those questions. So for example, in the Indian economic course, one of the first questions that we deal with is that why did India get liberalized in 1991? A lot of the reading of the history of policies that changed, of politics, of what's going on in the world is used to sort of explore this question of why did India liberalize in 1991. Another important aspect of it is to get students to do research. And this is again once also not just the economics program, you find this across programs in APU, but a big focus on students doing their own research. So let's say in a class you do assignment and the students can define their own questions, and then they go and look at databases, look at case studies, and figure out how to address that question. Then we come back to class and discuss it and try and find out what was missing, what are the drawbacks, what were the strengths of this presentation. So students finding their own resources as opposed to being given text, given material is a way of teaching here. And I think the last thing we wanted to focus on is that we felt like writing and communicating is a very important part of the economic skill toolbooks. A lot of economists in different ways have to present what their ideas to clients, to businesses, to the public. And so there are courses which are focused on how you communicate economic ideas, especially to an audience which might not understand economics. And so writing, speaking, communicating is also a big part of the program. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is the list of the compulsory courses, and instead of describing them all, I'll just tell you a little bit about what our thinking is. So for us, there are different school boards which do economics, but for us, students knowing economics is not essential. That is that we are happy to have students who have not done economics in school, we are in fact also okay with taking students who might not have done maths till class 12. So we have had students who've done maths till class 10. And the first two economics courses, which is referred to as Introduction to Economics 1 and 2, is focused on teaching students in a broad way economics. The tools of economics, some major theories, a little bit of history, how to read graphs, how to do some data analysis, to give you the toolbox, so to bring the whole class on the same level. There are a few things very interesting about this course. I think the first is that we use this textbook, which some of our faculties have contributed to. It's a freely available textbook online, which a bunch of authors around the world have written. And its main idea was to create a textbook which is accessible to students and which is is relevant to contemporary times. You can find this textbook both on the Azim Premji University website, the economics page, or you can type in Google, and I'll write it later for you, but it's called Core Econ. That's spelled COREECON. And it's a free website which anybody can access that textbook to give you a flavor of what the first two courses are like. Then you have standard courses, which is in micro and macro, and one of our compulsory courses, political economy, which is different from micro and macro in the kind of theories that it brings. So that's one of the courses which gives breadth to our program. The statistics and programming course, we have two variants of it. One for students who have not done maths, whose maths is not really strong, and one for those who have a strong base in maths. And the idea is that after doing these two courses, all students will be brought at the same level. And lastly, because the Indian context is important to us, we have a course in Indian economy. Now, a couple of things I think I should also mention, that some of you might be thinking that, you've already studied economics in school. Why should you have to do the same Introduction to Economics course that other students who have not done? But I think our teaching and how we do economics is very different from how it's taught in school. A lot of things in school are very focused towards giving the exam, and a lot of the information is not based around understanding why they happened, what they mean, how to work it around, but more on sort of just understanding the logistics of how a certain model or a graph or a theory works. So it's inculcating a different way of thinking about economics and applying it in the world around you. Secondly, we have students from different backgrounds in maths. However, I should tell you, maths is an integral part of economics, and in different courses in some or the other way, you do maths. It might be through statistics, it might be through just looking at data, or it might be some more complicated. We believe that our program, and we have some common curriculum courses, will help any student get up to level in a degree of maths required to do further courses. So I would like to reiterate that we are happy to have students who might not have done maths till class 12. However, maths is integral to economics, and once you come into the program, you have to learn maths. However, we take it as as part of our teaching challenge to help everyone get up to a level of maths that's required for doing economics. Will you go to the next slide for me? Okay, so over time we've had many different kinds of elective courses. Right now, I think in the program you can do 5 or maybe 6 electives, and they are very dependent on the kinds of faculties we have. But currently we have some amount of courses from this list that's available, and we put our courses into 3 kinds of baskets. And the thinking is that students should do each 3 kinds of categories. And students have to pick electives from each of these categories, though how many from each is up to them. One category is what we call the policy or very sort of real world application courses. One is what we like to see as more as different ways of doing economics or different ways of seeing the world, with what we call perspective courses. And one is what we call methodological, procedural, or courses which are based around economic tools. You'll see some courses which are popular in economics programs everywhere, such as development economics, international trade, econometrics, advanced macro-micro, game theory. And you'll find some courses which are very unusual, which you don't find in too many programs. And I think that's also something that we've added to the program, such as we have economic history course, feminist economics, economic philosophy, history of economic thought. One of the newest courses we've added is computational economics, because it's becoming a more important part of the discipline. Can you go to the next slide? Okay, so let me just end by saying that there are, economics, because of the nature of the degree, which is analytical and quantitative, there are many kinds of jobs which are open, because you are introduced to both reading, writing, analysis, as well as quant. But we've had students who go on to very different kinds of jobs and sectors. Many times, a good economics training does not mean that you have to do a job that economists do. Other careers also. I mean, economists have good tool. I mean, you get a good skill set to do other kinds of careers. Some of the interesting things that our students have done is gone to teaching, got into public administration by giving the entrance exam for Indian Economic Services, for the RBI, working in the corporate sector, so doing doing an MBA in finance, banking, marketing, involved in the NGO sector, and as well as being a researcher or a journalist. I'll take any additional questions on the program I can take in our question answer session at the end. So Sonal, I'm done with my presentation.
Thank you. Thanks, Rahul. Thanks for emphasizing on the eligibility criteria, saying that students need not study mathematics in class 11 and 12, because we usually have that questions from students writing to us asking with this concern. So thanks for clarifying this. I'll just quickly go through the selection process once, and then I think we can have a question and answer session with all the faculty on board. Yeah.
I think there is some mechanism within the amplifier because today I had almost kept it at 20.
Yeah, so the selection process, we now, and the last date to apply for the regular admissions window is 9th of April. Please make sure you apply before the last date. We will not extend the given extension in applying. As discussed already in the last week, the National Entrance Test part has two categories. One is the English and Quantitative Aptitude paper, and then we have descriptive question. We also have past paper questions on the website. Please go to the website and access those sample question papers, which will help you in knowing the questions that we ask. And also we have interviews. The students who get shortlisted from the test will be invited for the interviews with the faculty members, and the interviews will take place in the month of June this year. Yeah. So I think we can have the question and answer session now. I would have all the faculty on board, and
The questions are also.
yeah, I think, sorry, I was on mute. Yes, I think we can start with the question and answer session now. So the first question we have is for the philosophy major. And I think faculty have already, a few of the faculty have already answered those in the chat box. But I would just like to read it out for you, Abhishek. The question says, since it is very subjective and relies on basically questioning the fundamentals of whether anything can be right, how will the examinations be conducted and how will students be graded? So if you can just...
Yeah, there are two parts to this question. The first part is really an assumption on what philosophy does. I'll just answer by saying that no, philosophy is not subjective. The fundamental questions that arise over, for example, the nature of evidence, the rules of inference. I'm sorry, there's a lot of background noise. Yeah, so these kind of questions, they are not really subjective. I mean, the rules of inference that are applicable to me in 2021 are the same rules of inference that were applicable to, let's say, Aristotle in 400 BC. So these are not subjective things. The other is a question about how we go about evaluating exams. So well, in exams, so the idea is, and this I have put out in the chat as well, you will be trained to really think carefully and clearly on a particular topic. The exam is just going to be evaluating you on this. You'll be given probably an essay. You have to present your views, give reasons. So what is called an argument. You have to present clear arguments in favor of your view, and you have to consider objections to your view. And yeah, that's how we go about evaluating, and that's how we go about conducting examination. There won't be any like a 2-hour thing in which you have to solve 50 questions that you probably have in schools. We don't have that. An interesting thing which I have not mentioned in the chat is that some of the assignments involve students working as a group to come up with the answers to a particular question. So yeah, that there is that as well. There would be individual assignments as well as group assignments. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thanks, Abhishek. We have one more question for philosophy, which is can you similarly tell us more about the opportunities after the BA philosophy program?
Right. So I can tell you what our students have been doing. Some of them have gone to work with NGOs. One of them is a sports journalist. Some of them are working to improve education, like school level education in India, by working as teacher educators, teacher trainers. But that's because we have, I mean, all of these things, a lot of people go in public service, etc. Yeah, we have a small sample size. If you talk about what people can do, well, you'll be trained to work in logic. You'll have some understanding of, the kind of logic that is used in computation, in finance. You'll have some understanding of economics if you take the economics stream. So really, given the capabilities, I think the job that you want is really up to you. You will be trained sufficiently well to take up a lot of these jobs, employment opportunities.
Okay, thanks, Abhishek. And there's the another question from English major. I think Nirja have already read it. Is the question is writing fiction focused on as a specialization in the English curriculum? So, yeah, Nirja, if you can just.
So there is a focus on writing fiction, but there are several aspects to writing that are built through the program. So writing fiction is definitely a part of it. So there may not necessarily be an entire course or an entire stream that allows you just to work on fiction alone, but fiction will form a part of the creative writing course. But several other courses will build on writing for other platforms and writing in other formats as well.
All right, thanks, Nirja. So there's one more question. It says, I have applied to philosophy. Can I also enroll in Intro to Literature and writing for the public from English, and doing history and history of the present from history? So, do I repeat the question once more? Yeah. So the question says, I have applied to philosophy. Can I also enroll in Intro to Literature and writing for the public from English, and doing history and history of the present from history major? So the student want to understand, if the student has applied for philosophy, can he or she enroll into the courses that are there for English and history?
So this shall I go ahead? I think the others can add if they would like to. But the challenge. So in principle, yes, students can take courses from another major. You may not have the exact choice of course. So I can't promise you right now that you will absolutely be able to do the courses which you have just listed, especially because Intro to Literature is the first semester course. And typically, for any student coming in for a major, the first semester is kind of frozen because we have a lot of common curriculum papers. So there may not be space for you in your first year actually to do too much extra courses in the major that you have chosen. But once you've chosen a major, you can do courses in another major. But the timetable has to allow you to be able to do some courses. And surely you can have your pick of whichever electives or specializations are being offered from the other majors at the time that you can do it. You will be more free to make these choices, I think, in your second year onwards. That's my response.
Thanks, Neerja. This helps. There's one more question. What we have here is for the philosophy major, which is, what are the timings of an APU philosophy major's work day? Do students have a 5-day 9 to 5 work week only on weekdays or on Saturdays as well?
So technically, it's not a 9 to 5 work day. There are courses, there are classes at different times of the day. There are no classes in the second half of Friday, so it's not really a 5-day 9 to 5 thing. Depends on how much work you put during the week. If you attend all the classes, pay attention in the classes, and go through your assignments in time and judiciously, yeah, you have the weekend for yourself. But if you do not, then probably no, you'll be also working on the weekends. But no, we do not have anything like a clear-cut work day or something like that.
All right. All right. So here's a question for the economics major, Rahul. So is there the question says, is there a specific course for the economics students to build the necessary mathematical aptitude required for the degree, especially for those who didn't read maths in their +2?
Yeah. Okay, that's a good question actually. I think before joining economics, not only here but any economics program, it's a good idea to update some of your maths. And I think generally the class 11 and 12 CBSE maths course is a good course to build up on, and you can find the textbooks free online. Some topics that I think are very important are A is any graphs. Basic statistics, which is the calculation of mean, median, mode, looking at distribution, standard deviation, basic calculus, that's to the first degree, and ideally, if possible, some set theory. But I think for me, if you look at the 11th, 12th NCERT textbooks, that's what would be expected in a standard economics program. For those of you who are looking to join this program, however, I think all of it is not possible to study by yourself. So you'll be made to do, those who haven't done maths will go through a course which will build up these before doing more advanced maths topics.
Okay, so we have the next question for Varuni, history. It says, how can I prepare for the BA history descriptive paper? If you could,
right. Yes. Again, that's a good question to ask. Now, basically, the best way to prepare for a BA history descriptive paper would be to read. There's nothing else I can ask you to do, and you can pick and choose what you're reading. You can pick and choose novels, fiction, non-fiction. Read whatever newspaper comes to your home in whichever language it is that the newspaper is in. Read a magazine, irrespective of what that magazine is. It could be a magazine that your grandparents subscribe to or your parents subscribe to. That doesn't matter. The reason why I say reading is important is because the descriptive paper basically has a passage, which could be fiction or non-fiction. It could be autobiographical, it could be a description of a historical event. And then we pose questions based upon that passage that examine two things. And these are the two things that we examine. The first is basic comprehension. Okay, and that is very, very basic. It's like basically what is the passage telling you about and what information it's giving you. And secondly, we examine your analytical abilities. So if we ask you to answer a question based upon something, some key theme or some key aspect that the passage is talking about. So as I said, your ability to read and comprehend, your ability to stay with a text is what we would ask you to prepare for. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Varuni. We have one more question for history, which is, what is the average history class?
So an average class that we imagine is around 30. It could be a few less, it could be a few more. But we're looking at a ballpark of 30, certainly no more than 35 in any given classroom. And this is based upon our averages of what is the kind of batch that we think is optimal for a faculty member to teach in the kind of teaching that we do at Azim Premji University. Okay, our courses, as you've already seen others answer, they're not just based upon lecturing. There's a lot, they're very interactive. There is field work, there is group work, there are other kinds of things. So we like to keep our classes at a certain level where the instructor can meaningfully do all of these activities inside of the classroom.
Thanks, Varuni. This helps. I have one more question for economics, wherein the student is asking, how can I practice for BA Economics descriptive paper other than the paper that is available on the university website?
Yeah, and I think there's also another question I see on, what should someone who has not studied economics in 11th and 12th expect from the economics entrance test? So I think two kinds of things to keep in mind. One is that we will not be testing you anything from economics textbooks because we have students applying both in and out. What we do expect from students, however, is some exposure to economics and ideally some exposure to what's happening around the world or in India. We expect the students who want to do economics have some interest in that. So the format of the question is very similar to what you see in a descriptive, which is that it will give you a graph from something about contemporary India or contemporary world, and you will be asked to do some simple analysis of the graph, showing things like what is increasing, what is decreasing, some knowledge of things like ratio of proportions will be needed for that. And then there will be a question asking you to explain something, and it will be something which is commonsensical, but which you'll have a good idea about if you follow a bit of the news or know about things that are happening around. So they're open-ended questions. There's no right or wrong answer. So, for example, last year we gave some data from the employment after the lockdown. And how many people have lost jobs, and we asked students to do some calculations from the graph as well as to try and explain why some things have happened. Before that, we had put some data on poverty rates in different countries, and we had asked why some countries are better, some are worse. What can you do to improve it? So there's sort of some kind of something about general knowledge about the world around you, as well as some thinking through about some questions of important economic policies. So something that you'll be exposed to. So a good way of preparing for it, I would say, is to just do your revise basic statistics and graphs and follow up on what's been happening in India and the world this year. I think that would sort of make you well prepared for the economics.
Thanks, Rahul. We have a similar question for the philosophy major. The student is asking, what material must one study while preparing for the test, apart from the sample papers, and also for the how to prepare for the interview for the philosophy major.
So there is, I think it's a good question, and thank you for raising. There is no discipline-specific knowledge that you need for the philosophy exam. As I've been stressing, it's really about being able to think clearly. So the exams just test you on that. Even the technical notion of validity or soundness, etc., you don't really need to know ahead. The question itself explains what is meant by validity, and you just need to then follow what is mentioned in the question. It is always good to know about things if you are writing an essay. General knowledge of things, but it's not possible to, for example, in this 10 whatever time is left to try to cram up all the information. So we are not really looking for that. We are not even suggesting that. Just turn up for the examination with a cool and composed mind. Think carefully through the questions that have been asked, and write clearly. Follow the question really. For the interview, probably you'll need to know a bit about philosophy, so that we can understand whether or not you are interested and you can make a good philosophy candidate. But that happens later. For the exam, you don't need any domain-specific knowledge. You just need to follow the questions closely. That's it.
Yeah. We have one more question, which is for the English major, more or less the same kind of question. How can one prepare for the BA English subject?
I was just typing up that answer in the chat. So I suppose I'll just speak about it as well. Again, I will have to say the same thing that others have been saying, which is that the descriptive paper will not exactly test your existing knowledge in the subject. So you don't have to be worried that you will be asked something about the content of, say, English literature in your school or something like that. Again, one of the basic things we expect is that you are able to answer directly to the question that is asked in the exam. So one kind of advice I have for you is to make sure that you write an answer that is very specifically linked to the question that is asked. And the question will be paired with a passage. It will be a passage from some kind of a story. It's the same. It was the same, for instance, last time. You have a paragraph or maybe a couple of paragraphs from a story, and these stories are stories that are actually written for young adults, so it's not necessarily going to be a very complex passage. But what you'll be expected to do is you'll be expected to write a short answer in response to the question that is asking you to read this essay, right? So for example, if you have a story that is telling you something about, say, someone's opinion on reading books, right? Then you will be expected to write an answer giving us your own opinion on what you think about reading, what kinds of books do people read, and when they do read, what are the kinds of experiences they have. The question will ask you for your reasoning. Do you agree with this statement? Do you disagree with this statement? And it will ask you for some examples. Now, I would say that you can score a good sort of score for your answer so long as you ensure that you have answered in response to the question, which means that there is some sense in your question that you have read the passage, you are offering examples because we have asked for an example, and the example can be from anywhere, right? It can be a story you know in a language that you know, but you are writing about it in response to this particular question. But the answer has to carry an example, and it has to carry some reasoning, and there has to be some sense that you have understood the passage that is given to you in the question paper. I hope that answers your question about how to prepare, at least if it's for the entrance itself. In general, if it is about preparing for the program, then maybe one sort of basic advice I can give you is to try and think about all the maybe creative text that you know. One possibility is that you're an avid reader and you read a great deal, and you have read many novels and stories, and so you feel that this is something that you're very good at. If you're this kind of a person, then I would advise you to think carefully about why you like what you're reading. So it would be very useful for you to be able to back up your opinion about liking or disliking something with more specific reasons, maybe a character, or some more evidence about, say, plot in a particular novel. That's very important, to know why you like or you don't like something. If, on the other hand, you're very worried because you feel you don't read as much and that's not a habit you have developed very intensely, then perhaps you like watching movies. Okay, perhaps you like watching television shows. Perhaps there are some creative aspects that you're interested in, like, say, drawing, or maybe you're interested in just hearing stories. If you are this kind of person, this also can allow you to think about storytelling and about narratives in general, which is also a very big part of studying literature. So, as part of preparing for the program and even your interview, try and think about what it is about these films that you like. If you identify with the hero, why do you do so? If you identify with a certain story, then why do you do so? These are things that might help you think about some of the questions and ideas we bring up in the courses as well.
Thanks, Nirja. Your response was very clear enough, and I hope this helps our students and applicants who have applied to us. That's a generic question. I mean, I think the student is selected from the early admissions round and wants to know when our program will be starting. So, as a part of team admissions, I would say the program will tentatively start in the month of August. Yeah. So we'll wait if we have few more questions or otherwise I think we can just wind up the session.
In fact, some of the foundation earlier.
So I just saw a question for economics. Someone was asking that they are from Navodaya Vidyalaya Samiti and wanted to know how to cope with economics from the first year. So I think it's a general question. Any of you wanting to get some, I mean, especially if you haven't done economics, you want to revise it. Just like with maths, I think the NCERT textbooks for economics is a good introduction to it. So one thing is you can download the class 12 textbook and look over it. The other is you can start looking at the textbook we use, which I mentioned before. It's called Code Econ. If you type in Google, you can find it, and I'll just put the link in the chat also.
I would like to add to that the NCERT history textbooks too are very good, although we do not ask any domain knowledge questions in the entrance exam. Just to get a sense of the building blocks of history that we are invested in, the NCERT textbooks are a good place to look at.
Yeah. Thanks, Varuni. Thanks, Rahul. I'm just going through if we have left any questions unanswered.
They are already.
Yeah, I think we have covered almost all the questions. And
That's the foundation. I don't know whether this all will not ask them.
so for economics, we have one question, as in what type of questions will appear in BA Economics honors descriptive paper? I think we already discussed this, Rahul.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have discussed
Yeah.
this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there are no more questions. I think we can just wind up the session. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of this session. Thank you.
Thanks.
Happy
Thank
Holi.
you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks everyone.